Okay, so anyway, I lucked out in so many ways, from having been invited back in the village from my very first visit in 1979 to the archival research where I found these 15 heads of households, to finding everybody, finding the village in every census that was possible to find them in, and then getting these half-dozen people that could tell me things nobody else could tell me. Let me say just a word about the book. This book is entitled El Cerrito, New Mexico, 8 Generations in a Spanish Village. What I found as I got into the research was that there were 8 rather definable generations, each of which was 25 years long. That's kind of long for a generation, but nonetheless I defined it as 25 years. So the village is founded in 1824. Well, my first generation I call 1825, then 1850, 1875, 1900. Okay, I have 8 generations, and each of those generations faced a challenge, a major challenge. The first generation had as a challenge to build a fortified plaza for defense against the Apache and nomadic Indians that were rather an obstacle, a problem. And the second generation I called the farm generation because now they were well along in their fortification and actually farming already with their irrigation ditch, but they began to focus on their farming for subsistence. And then the third generation, 1875, they begin to branch out and they begin to extend their cattle raising and sheep raising operations and make more money. So this is the livestock generation. And then the fourth generation is the homestead generation, where they begin to homestead land. And the generation for 1925, I call the school generation. Now let me say something about the school generation, because this is interesting stuff, I think. There were 4 villagers along the way who were school teachers. People from the village that were hired to be the school teacher. And one of those 4 was Margarita Quintana. Margarita Quintana de Armijo. She married a guy named Cristiano Armijo, who was from the village. So here was a couple that was marrying within the village. And they lived right in this house. This was their house. This was the Armijo or Quintana, Margarita Quintana house. And Margarita Quintana was a major force in the village. She not only was a school teacher, but she learned English because she went to high school in Las Vegas, and very few people went beyond the 8th grade, which was what the grade school went through here. Because how did you go to high school? You had to have a relative in Las Vegas, where the high schools were. There were 2 of them, both in Las Vegas. And you had to have a relative to live with because you couldn't possibly commute every day, So Margarita had a relative to live with, and she went through high school, and she learned English when she was in Las Vegas. Then she came back to be a school teacher. Well, she taught catechism in the church. She was very religious. She was kind of a short person, vivacious, pretty, well-dressed. I talked to person after person who had known Margarita, because everybody did, and they all agreed that she was everything to that village. She was everything to that village. She kept the records on who was born, who died. She carved the gravestones. She was a major, major person. So for the school generation, 1925, I have Margarita Quintana as the example of the leader of that generation, because she definitely was. And for a woman to do that in Spanish society was quite amazing.